She warned him not to enter the loading bay. Seconds later, the collapsing crates proved her intuition right. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was another typical afternoon at the massive distribution center just outside of the city. The hum of forklifts, the soft clang of metal shelves shifting, and the chatter of workers filled the air. Everyone was moving with purpose, except for one person. Maria, a quiet, unassuming warehouse worker, was always in the background, diligently doing her job without ever drawing attention to herself. She had been here for years, unnoticed by most of her colleagues, blending in with the flow of operations. But there was something about her that made her different from everyone else. It wasn't her appearance or the way she dressed. It was her uncanny ability to sense danger before it happened. She had always trusted her instincts, and they had never failed her. Today was no exception. As she stood by the loading dock, Maria noticed something strange. The crates stacked precariously high in the corner were shifting ever so slightly. The way they were leaning made her uneasy, but she couldn't quite explain why. Something told her that if the situation wasn't corrected immediately, disaster was imminent. As she looked around, her eyes caught the figure of Henry, the warehouse manager, confidently striding toward the loading bay. Henry was used to being in control, often dismissing the warnings of his subordinates. He had a reputation for being a know-it-all, someone who believed that his authority over the warehouse made him infallible. Maria felt a knot form in her stomach as she watched him approach the danger zone. She knew she had to act fast. With a deep breath, Maria walked towards Henry. "Henry, don't go in there," she said, her voice calm but firm. "The crates are unstable. I've seen it happen before. It's not safe." Henry stopped in his tracks and looked at her, his expression one of annoyance. "Come on, Maria, we've been through this before," he said dismissively, waving her off. "I know this warehouse like the back of my hand. Nothing's going to happen." But Maria wasn't convinced. She could feel it in her bones. There was something wrong. She had seen situations like this too many times before. With a sense of urgency, she repeated, "Henry, please, just listen to me." But Henry, determined to prove he knew better, ignored her. He took a step forward, his focus solely on the task at hand. Maria's heart raced, but she couldn't let her fear hold her back. She had to trust her instincts. And as if on cue, the crates that Henry had walked towards suddenly began to shift violently. A loud crash echoed through the warehouse as one of the crates toppled over, sending a cascade of heavy boxes tumbling toward Henry. In the split second that followed, Maria acted without thinking. She sprinted forward, grabbing Henry and pulling him out of the way just as the crates came crashing down where he had been standing. For a moment, everything went silent. Henry was frozen, staring at the wreckage that had nearly claimed his life. He looked up at Maria, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Maria took a deep breath, still shaken but relieved. "I didn't know," she replied quietly. "I just felt it. I trust my instincts." Henry stood there, stunned, as he looked at Maria, the woman he had always underestimated. It wasn't until now that he realized just how wrong he had been. The warehouse, once a place of routine, had become the backdrop for a moment of realization for Henry. Maria wasn't just a quiet worker. She was someone who saw things that others couldn't. And, in this case, her intuition had saved his life. Maria stood in the middle of the warehouse, her heart still racing from the close call. The sound of the collapsing crates echoed in her mind, but it was the feeling of Henry's life in her hands that lingered the longest. She glanced over at him, still standing there in stunned silence, staring at the wreckage. Her instincts had been right, but that didn't mean she was immune to the aftermath. Henry was lucky that she had been there to pull him away just in time. Maria, however, didn't feel lucky. She was used to being the one who noticed the little details, the ones that others often missed. But seeing someone's life nearly end because of a moment of inattention left a strange weight in her chest. Henry finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "You saved me, Maria. I don't know how to thank you." Maria gave him a small, tight smile, but her eyes were distant. "You don't need to thank me, Henry. I just did what anyone would do." But deep down, she knew she wasn't like anyone. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Maria went back to her duties, organizing the rest of the warehouse, making sure nothing else was off-kilter. But her mind kept drifting back to Henry. He had never been the type to show much gratitude, let alone vulnerability. It was strange seeing him like this, almost human. At the end of the shift, Maria was preparing to leave when Henry called her over. His voice was softer now, almost hesitant. "Maria, could you stay for a minute? I need to talk to you." Maria, unsure of what he wanted, nodded and walked over to where he stood. "What is it?" she asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Look," he started, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "I owe you an apology. I should have listened to you earlier. You were right about the crates, and I didn't give you enough credit." Maria blinked, surprised. "Apology accepted, Henry. It's not a big deal." But Henry wasn't done. He paused for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. "No, it's more than that," he continued. "I've been thinking. I know I've been hard on you. I've been tough on all of you, really. And I know I haven't exactly been the best manager." Maria raised an eyebrow, not used to hearing him speak so candidly. "Why the change of heart?" she asked, genuinely curious. Henry looked down for a moment before meeting her gaze again. "I guess it took nearly dying to realize how wrong I've been. I've been so focused on running this place, on being the boss, that I didn't see the people around me. I didn't see you." Maria could feel the weight of his words, but she stayed silent, unsure of how to respond. He wasn't the type of man who admitted his mistakes easily. Henry took a step closer, his tone more serious now. "I don't want to just be the guy who tells people what to do. I want to be someone they can trust, someone who actually listens." Maria felt a strange flutter in her chest. She had always respected Henry from a distance. He was a good manager, after all. But this new side of him, the vulnerability and the honesty, made her see him in a completely different light. "Well, if you really mean that," she said carefully, "then you're going to have to prove it. Trust isn't built in one conversation." Henry nodded, his expression firming. "I understand, and I'm willing to do the work." Maria didn't know why, but she believed him. Something had shifted in Henry, and maybe, just maybe, it was for the better. The next few weeks passed by, and the changes in the warehouse were noticeable. Henry started listening more, paying attention to the workers' concerns, and even asking for Maria's input on safety measures. At first, it felt odd, seeing someone so authoritative take a step back and actually care about what the people under him thought. Maria watched all of this unfold with cautious optimism. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for the company's future after all. And then, one evening, as she was getting ready to leave, Henry approached her again. This time, his expression was different, more determined. "Maria, I've been thinking. You were right. This warehouse needs to change, and we need someone who actually knows what they're doing. I want to offer you a position, an actual position as a safety consultant. We'll work together to make this place safer for everyone." Maria's eyes widened. Safety consultant? It wasn't what she had imagined when she first started working here. But as she stood there, the weight of Henry's offer sinking in, she realized it wasn't just a job. It was an opportunity. An opportunity to not only make a difference in the warehouse, but to prove to herself that her instincts and her hard work were worth something. "I'll think about it," she said quietly, but in her heart, she knew that this was just the beginning of something bigger. The warehouse, once a place of routine and monotony, had now become a place where real change was happening, and Maria was at the center of it. Maria walked through the warehouse the next morning, her mind racing with the weight of Henry's offer. Safety consultant. She had been working here for years, quietly, doing her job and keeping her head down. But now, things were different. Henry, the man who had once dismissed her instincts, was now asking for her help to change the entire operation. It felt surreal. As she walked through the aisles, the sound of machines humming in the background, she couldn't help but think about how much had changed. Just a few weeks ago, she was just another worker in the background, blending in with the crowd. Now, she was being given an opportunity to shape the future of the warehouse. It was everything she had hoped for. Still, doubt lingered in the back of her mind. She had always trusted her instincts, but this was a whole new level. Taking on a role like this would mean responsibility, real responsibility. And with that came the pressure to succeed. When she met Henry at the office later that morning, he was already deep into the plans for the upcoming changes. He had brought in a few colleagues from corporate to discuss the logistics of making the warehouse safer. They were all sitting around the large conference table, looking at blueprints and charts. As Maria entered the room, Henry stood up and gestured for her to take a seat. "Maria," he began, "I'm glad you're here. These are some of the people from the corporate office. We've been going over the plans for the new safety protocols, and I want your input." Maria sat down, feeling the weight of the eyes on her. She wasn't used to this kind of attention, but she held her head high and took a deep breath. This was her chance to make a real difference. Over the next hour, they discussed the issues the warehouse had been facing: unsecured loads, dangerous stacking, and lack of clear signage in certain areas. As they spoke, Maria found herself contributing more and more, offering suggestions and solutions that everyone seemed to take seriously. For the first time in her life, she felt like her voice was being heard. Henry watched her closely throughout the meeting. Maria could tell he was impressed. When the meeting finally wrapped up, he pulled her aside. "You've got a real talent for this," he said, his voice quieter now that the others had left. "I'm glad I brought you on board." Maria nodded, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. But she knew this was just the beginning. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of changes. Maria worked closely with the team, conducting safety audits, reorganizing storage areas, and implementing new procedures. Every day was different, but every day felt like progress. The warehouse was transforming. But as the changes began to take effect, not everyone was happy. Some of the older employees resented the new protocols, seeing them as unnecessary and time-consuming. One afternoon, as Maria was walking through the floor, she overheard a conversation between two workers. "This safety stuff is a joke," one said, rolling his eyes. "Maria thinks she's changing the world. But all this new stuff is just going to slow us down." Maria felt a pang of frustration. She had worked so hard to make things better, and yet, there were still people who didn't get it. But she didn't let it get to her. She had a job to do, and she was going to do it, no matter what. She couldn't afford to let the negativity hold her back. The next day, Henry called her into his office again. He was sitting behind his desk, looking more serious than usual. "We need to talk," he said. "There's been some resistance to the new protocols. Some of the old-timers are pushing back." Maria nodded, expecting this. "I figured as much," she said. "It's not unusual. Change is always hard." Henry leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "I need you to speak with the team. I think if they hear it from you, they'll understand why these changes are so important." Maria paused for a moment, considering his words. "I can do that," she said, her voice steady. "I know how to approach them." The next morning, Maria stood before a group of her colleagues, the older workers who had been skeptical of the changes. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "I know a lot of you are frustrated with the new procedures," she started, her voice calm but firm. "I get it. Change can be hard. But the truth is, these changes are here to protect all of us. They're here to make sure we all get home safe at the end of the day. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather be safe than sorry." There was silence for a moment, and then one of the workers, an older man named Frank, spoke up. "You really think this is going to make a difference?" he asked, his tone skeptical. Maria met his gaze. "I do," she said, her voice strong. "I've seen the accidents, I've seen the close calls, and I don't want to see anyone get hurt. We all have families to go home to." Frank looked at her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "All right, Maria. I get it. I'm with you." Slowly, the others began to speak as well, agreeing with her and expressing their support for the changes. Maria felt a sense of relief wash over her. It wasn't going to be easy, but she had managed to get through to them. Things were starting to come together, and she was beginning to see the fruits of her labor. The next day, as she walked through the warehouse, she noticed something different. The workers were more engaged, more aware of the new procedures. The atmosphere had shifted. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was progress. And for the first time in a long time, Maria felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The weeks that followed were a blur of meetings, safety drills, and implementing new protocols. Maria found herself spending long hours in the warehouse, making sure the new systems were in place and that everyone was following the rules. Despite the initial resistance, things were starting to settle down. The atmosphere in the warehouse had shifted. There was more collaboration, more respect for the new safety measures, and more people asking for her input. Henry, too, seemed more engaged. His leadership was beginning to evolve, and Maria saw a side of him she had never noticed before, a side that was open to learning and changing. One afternoon, after a particularly long meeting with corporate about the next phase of safety improvements, Henry asked Maria to stay behind. "Maria," he said, his voice more serious than usual, "I need to talk to you about something." She nodded, wondering what was on his mind. As they sat down in his office, Henry looked at her with a mix of determination and uncertainty. "I've been thinking about what you said when we first started working together," he began, "about trust and leadership. You were right. I've been so focused on the bottom line that I didn't see what was right in front of me. I was just going through the motions, managing the warehouse without truly connecting with the team." Maria listened quietly, unsure of where this conversation was headed. Henry continued, his tone more reflective. "You've shown me that leadership isn't just about telling people what to do. It's about showing up for them, listening to their concerns, and making sure they feel valued." Maria shifted in her seat, feeling a bit uncomfortable with the praise. She had always kept a low profile, never seeking attention or recognition. She just wanted to do her job and do it well. "I've been thinking a lot," Henry said, "and I want to offer you something. I think you're ready for a bigger role. I want to make you my assistant manager. You'll have more responsibility, more authority, and a chance to shape the future of this warehouse alongside me." Maria was taken aback. She hadn't expected this. Assistant manager? It felt surreal. She had always been content in her position, doing the work no one else wanted to do, quietly keeping things running. She had never imagined herself in a leadership role. "I don't know what to say," Maria said honestly. "I never thought I'd be offered something like this." Henry smiled, his expression sincere. "You've earned it, Maria. I've seen how hard you've worked, how much you care about the team, and how you've helped turn this place around. I can't think of anyone better to help lead the way." Maria paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. This was a huge step, and it came with its own set of challenges. But she couldn't deny that it also came with the opportunity to make a real difference. She had always trusted her instincts, and right now, they were telling her that this was the right move. "I'll accept," she said finally, her voice steady. "But I want to make sure we keep the focus on the team, on making this place better for everyone. It's not about me. It's about all of us working together." Henry nodded, clearly relieved. "That's exactly why I'm offering you this role. You get it, Maria. You understand what this job is really about." The days that followed were a whirlwind of new responsibilities. Maria found herself balancing her old duties with the demands of her new position. She was still involved in the day-to-day operations, but now she also had a say in the bigger decisions. She worked closely with Henry, helping to implement new strategies, oversee training sessions, and improve communication between the different departments. It wasn't always easy. There were still challenges. Some workers were hesitant to accept her new role, and there were moments when she felt overwhelmed by the pressure. But with every success, every small improvement, Maria felt more confident in her abilities. She had worked hard to get here, and now she was proving to herself and to others that she was more than just a quiet worker in the background. One afternoon, a few weeks into her new role, Maria received a message from Henry asking her to meet in his office. When she walked in, she found him standing by the window, looking out over the warehouse floor. "Maria," he began, his voice low, "I've been getting feedback from the team. They trust you, Maria. They respect you. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, and I want you to know that I'm here to support you, no matter what." Maria felt a swell of pride. It wasn't just about the position anymore. It was about the trust and respect she had earned from her colleagues. It felt like everything was falling into place. And as she looked out at the warehouse floor, she realized that this was just the beginning. There was so much more she could do, so many more ways she could help improve the warehouse, and, more importantly, the lives of the people who worked there. With a renewed sense of purpose, Maria walked out of Henry's office and into the future. She didn't know exactly where it would take her, but for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever challenges came her way. The days following Maria's promotion were filled with new challenges and unexpected responsibilities. As assistant manager, she now had a voice in every major decision, from overseeing employee performance to making crucial adjustments to the safety protocols she had worked so hard to implement. It was everything she had worked for, and yet, it felt like the stakes were higher than ever. The warehouse, once a place where she quietly did. Her job had become her world. As much as she wanted to focus on making improvements, she found herself dealing with one issue after another. There were constant adjustments to be made, workers to keep on track, and endless meetings with upper management. But through it all, she held on to one guiding principle. She was here to make things better for everyone. One afternoon, Maria sat in her new office, reviewing the latest safety reports. The warehouse was running smoothly, but there were always things to fine-tune. She was deeply focused when Henry knocked on her door. "Got a minute?" he asked, his voice casual but his eyes serious. Maria looked up from her papers and nodded. "Of course, what's on your mind?" Henry stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "I've been getting some complaints," he began, sitting down across from her. Maria's heart skipped a beat. Complaints? She had worked tirelessly to make the warehouse a safer and more efficient place. "From who?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "A few of the older workers," he replied. "They feel like the new protocols are slowing them down. They don't think the changes are necessary." Maria frowned, feeling the familiar sense of frustration rise in her chest. It was always the same. Those who had been in the business the longest often resisted change the hardest. "I thought we had settled this already," she said. "The changes are for their safety. It's not about making things easier. It's about preventing accidents." Henry leaned forward, his expression serious. "I know that, Maria. And I'm behind you 100%. But we need to figure out how to get them on board. We can't afford to lose the trust of the team now." Maria nodded slowly, her mind racing. She knew Henry was right. If she couldn't get the older workers to buy into the new systems, all the progress they had made could be at risk. "I'll talk to them," she said finally. "But it's going to take time." "I know," Henry said, "but I have faith in you." Maria gave him a small smile, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle on her shoulders. That evening, she scheduled a meeting with the team. She wanted to address the concerns head-on, to let them know she understood their frustrations, but also to remind them of the bigger picture. When the time came, she stood before a group of workers who had been with the company for years, some of them even decades. They had seen it all, every safety issue, every near miss, and every hazard. Maria took a deep breath before speaking. "I know a lot of you are frustrated," she began, her voice steady but empathetic. "I understand that the changes we've made are different, and I know it's not always easy to adapt. But these changes are necessary. They are here to protect all of us. And I promise you, I wouldn't be asking for them if I didn't believe they would make a difference." There was a long silence as the workers exchanged glances. One man, Frank, who had been with the company for over 30 years, spoke up. "I get what you're saying, Maria," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "But some of this new stuff just feels like it's slowing us down. We've been doing this for years without any real issues." Maria nodded, knowing this was the heart of the problem. "I understand," she said. "But we're not just doing this to follow some rulebook. We've had close calls, accidents that could have been avoided if we had taken extra precautions. We don't want anyone to get hurt, and we can't afford to ignore the risks anymore." The group was quiet again, but this time, Maria could see that her words were starting to sink in. Frank shifted in his seat. "I guess we've all seen how things could go wrong," he said, almost to himself. "We just didn't think about it much." "And that's okay," Maria said. "But it's time to start thinking about it. And I need all of you to help me make this place better, safer." She paused, letting her words hang in the air. "I can't do this alone." Slowly, one by one, the workers nodded in agreement. The tension in the room began to lift, and for the first time, Maria saw a glimmer of understanding in their eyes. They weren't just going to follow the rules because she said so. They were going to work with her because they saw the importance of what she was doing. The meeting ended on a positive note, but Maria knew the road ahead would still be challenging. There were always going to be hurdles, always going to be resistance. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of unity among the team. They were all in this together, working toward the same goal. And as she walked back to her office that evening, she couldn't help but smile. This was why she had taken the job in the first place. Not for the title or the responsibility, but for the chance to make a difference. She had come a long way from the quiet worker in the background. Now, she was leading the way, and there was no turning back. The weeks following Maria's meeting with the team were filled with progress and growing camaraderie. The resistance to the new safety protocols started to fade, and the warehouse ran smoother than it ever had before. Maria felt a sense of pride every time she walked through the aisles. The workers were now more engaged, more aware of their surroundings, and the air seemed lighter. There were still the occasional challenges, but they were no longer insurmountable. Maria was beginning to see the real change she had always hoped for. As the team embraced the changes, Maria's role continued to evolve. Henry had been more than just a supervisor. He had become a mentor. He still respected Maria's instincts and leadership, but now, their partnership had deepened into something more collaborative. The two of them worked side by side, strategizing ways to improve efficiency and safety even further. They were becoming a force, leading the warehouse to a brighter future. One afternoon, as Maria was checking the supply chain reports in her office, Henry knocked and walked in. He had a thoughtful look on his face. "We've got an issue," he said, taking a seat. Maria looked up, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "What happened?" she asked. "The company just signed a major contract with a new supplier," Henry began. "They're bringing in larger shipments, and we're going to have to upgrade our storage systems." Maria's mind raced. Larger shipments meant more inventory, more complexity in the logistics. She knew this would be a challenge. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, ready to dive into the problem. Henry hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I want you to lead the project. We'll need to redesign the storage areas, bring in more equipment, and train the team on the new processes. I trust you with this." Maria's heart skipped a beat. Leading such a significant project was a huge responsibility, but she knew this was another opportunity for her to prove herself. "I'll get started right away," she said, her voice steady despite the rush of excitement and nerves. Over the next few weeks, Maria poured herself into the project. She worked closely with the warehouse team to redesign the storage areas, making sure that everything was optimized for the larger shipments. She also coordinated with the suppliers, ensuring that the new equipment arrived on time and that everything was in place to handle the increased volume. The pressure was intense, but Maria thrived under it. She knew that this project was a turning point not just for the warehouse, but for her own career. As the new storage systems were put into place, there were bumps along the way. There were delays in shipments, issues with equipment installation, and a few miscommunications that led to some frustration among the workers. But Maria didn't back down. She spent late nights at the warehouse, overseeing the work, troubleshooting problems, and ensuring that the team stayed on track. Her dedication didn't go unnoticed. Henry was impressed with her leadership, and the team began to see Maria in a new light. She wasn't just the assistant manager anymore. She was a problem solver, someone who could handle any challenge thrown her way. One evening, after a long day of working through the logistics, Maria was wrapping up when Henry stopped by her office. "How are you holding up?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. Maria looked up from her desk, her eyes tired but determined. "I'm good," she said with a smile. "It's been a lot, but we're making progress." Henry nodded, a proud smile on his face. "You're doing a great job, Maria. I knew you were the right person for this." Maria felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Henry had always believed in her, but now, more than ever, she felt like she was earning that belief. The next few days were a whirlwind as the final preparations for the new systems were made. When the first large shipment arrived, Maria stood at the loading bay, watching the team unload the boxes. It was a huge moment, a culmination of weeks of hard work. As the shipment was carefully sorted into the new storage areas, Maria felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she had ever experienced. The system was working. Everything was in its place. The team was efficient, and the workflow was smoother than ever before. "We did it," Maria said to Henry, who had been overseeing the process from the sidelines. He gave her a nod, his smile wide. "You did it, Maria. You made it happen." The days that followed were filled with more adjustments, more fine-tuning, but the warehouse was now operating at its highest capacity. The team had adapted to the new systems, and the larger shipments were being handled seamlessly. Maria knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter, not just for the warehouse, but for herself. She had proven, both to Henry and to her colleagues, that she was more than just a worker. She was a leader, and as she looked around the bustling warehouse floor, she felt a deep sense of pride. This place, this team, was her legacy, and she was ready to take on whatever came next. As the warehouse continued to thrive under Maria's leadership, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The improvements she had made, the systems she had implemented, were all working smoothly, but there was still a part of her that couldn't quite relax. She had worked so hard to get to this point, but now that she was in a position of power, she had to make sure she could maintain it. Henry, seeing her intensity, had a conversation with her one afternoon. "Maria, you've done an outstanding job," he said, as they stood by the loading bay, watching the workers unload yet another successful shipment. "You've proven yourself more than capable, but I want to make sure you're not burning yourself out." Maria glanced at him, raising an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" she asked. Henry sighed, his expression softening. "I know you're putting everything into this, and that's great. But don't forget to take care of yourself. This job can be demanding, and I don't want to see you lose sight of what's important." Maria smiled, grateful for his concern, but she knew what she was doing. She had always been driven, always willing to put in the hours, to make sure everything was perfect. But as Henry spoke, she began to realize how much of her own personal life she had let slip away. The warehouse had become everything. "I'll keep that in mind," she said, her tone sincere. Henry gave her a nod of approval before walking away. That night, Maria sat at her small kitchen table, reflecting on everything that had happened. She had accomplished so much in such a short time, but at what cost? Her friends had stopped calling, and she hadn't had a chance to see her family in weeks. She had been so focused on the warehouse that she had forgotten the very thing that had gotten her through the tough times, the people she cared about. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts, stopping at her mother's name. It had been too long since they'd talked. She dialed the number, feeling a twinge of guilt as the phone rang. "Hello," her mother answered, her voice warm and familiar. "Mom, it's Maria," she said, her voice soft. There was a pause on the other end, and then her mother's voice brightened. "Maria? I'm so glad you called. How are you?" Maria smiled. "I'm good. Really good, actually. The warehouse is doing great, and I'm in charge of a lot of new projects now." Her mother laughed, the sound light and comforting. "I knew you could do it," she said proudly. "But don't forget to take care of yourself, Maria. You've got to remember that you can't pour from an empty cup." Maria chuckled, echoing Henry's words from earlier that day. "I know, Mom. I've been thinking about that. I just need to find a balance." They talked for a while longer, and when they hung up, Maria felt a sense of relief. She had been so consumed with work that she had forgotten the importance of those simple connections, the ones that had always given her strength. Over the next few weeks, Maria worked to find that balance. She delegated more tasks to her team, trusting them to handle the daily operations while she focused on the big picture. She made time for her friends, for her family, and for herself. It wasn't easy. There were still moments when she felt like she was juggling too many things, but she was learning to prioritize. She knew that if she didn't take care of herself, the success she had worked so hard for would be in danger. One afternoon, as she was reviewing reports, in her office, Henry came by with a small smile on his face. "I've been hearing a lot of good things about you, Maria," he said. "The team is really starting to thrive under your leadership. You've created a solid foundation." Maria looked up from her papers, feeling a sense of pride. "Thanks, Henry. But it's not just me. The team has really come together, and I've learned to trust them more." Henry nodded. "That's the key," he said. "Leadership isn't just about making decisions. It's about empowering others to make their own decisions. And you're doing that." Maria smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. She had come a long way from the shy worker who had just wanted to do her job. Now, she was leading a team, making a real impact on the warehouse and on the people around her. As the weeks turned into months, Maria continued to grow into her role. She faced new challenges, but with each one, she became more confident in her ability to handle whatever came her way. She had built something meaningful, not just for the warehouse, but for herself. She had learned to balance her work and personal life, to trust her instincts, and to lead with both strength and compassion. And as she stood at the edge of the loading bay, watching the workers move efficiently, she knew one thing for certain. She was exactly where she was meant to be. As the months passed, Maria's leadership in the warehouse became more recognized, both inside and outside the company. She had built a reputation for herself as someone who was not only capable, but deeply committed to improving the warehouse for the workers who depended on it. She had earned the trust of her colleagues, and now, the company was looking to expand. One day, Henry called her into his office with a look of determination on his face. "Maria, I've got some big news, he said, leaning forward. The company has decided to open a new distribution center across town, and they want you to lead the project. Maria's heart skipped a beat. A new center? This was a huge opportunity, but it also came with immense pressure. You want me to run the new facility? She asked, her voice steady despite the excitement she was feeling. Yes, Henry said, his tone unwavering. You've proven you can handle the responsibility here. The company wants someone they can trust to lead this expansion, and you're the right person for the job. Maria felt a mix of pride and apprehension. She had come so far, but this was a step into unknown territory. Running the original warehouse had been challenging, but this new center was an entirely different ballgame. I'm honored, Maria said, trying to keep her composure. But this is a big change. I'll need to take everything I've learned here and apply it there. It's not going to be easy. Henry smiled. That's exactly why we're offering you this. You've got the vision, and you understand how to make things run efficiently. I have no doubt you'll succeed. Maria nodded slowly. She had worked hard for this moment, and despite the nerves, she knew it was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. Over the next few weeks, Maria dove into the details of the new project. She visited the new site, met with architects and contractors, and started planning the layout and operations for the new facility. The scope of the task was daunting, but she was determined to make it work. She spent countless hours at the new location, working late into the night to ensure that everything was in place. The company wanted the new center to be operational within 6 months, and Maria was prepared to meet that deadline. She pulled in some of the most trusted workers from the original warehouse to help with the transition, knowing that it would take a team effort to make this expansion a success. But even with the added support, the pressure mounted. As the opening day of the new facility approached, Maria began to feel the weight of the responsibility pressing down on her. She couldn't help but compare it to the early days at the warehouse, when she had been the one quietly doing her job in the background. Now, she was the one calling the shots, making decisions that would affect not just the workers, but the company as a whole. There were days when the stress seemed overwhelming. But she kept going, determined not to let the pressure get the best of her. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to back down now. One night, as Maria sat at her desk reviewing the final plans for the opening, she received a call. From Henry. How's everything going? He asked. It's going, Maria replied, her voice tired but resolute. We're almost ready. There are still a few loose ends to tie up, but we're on track. I know you're working hard, Maria, Henry said, his voice warm with encouragement. But don't forget to take a breath. You've done an incredible job so far. Don't let the pressure cloud your vision. Maria smiled faintly. I appreciate it, Henry. I'll make sure to take a break once we're up and running. The opening day finally arrived. Maria stood at the entrance of the new facility, watching as the first shipments rolled in. It was a surreal moment, one she had worked toward for months. The warehouse was filled with energy, workers bustling around, setting up, and getting everything in place. Maria's team was there, working with the same determination and focus that had made the original warehouse so successful. As the day went on, Maria felt a deep sense of pride. The facility was running smoothly, and the workers were adjusting well to the new processes. It wasn't perfect, but it was close. By the end of the day, the first shipments had been successfully unloaded and organized, and the new center was officially operational. Henry stopped by later that evening, smiling as he watched the operations unfold. You did it, Maria, he said, his voice full of pride. The new center is running just like the original warehouse. It's a huge accomplishment. Maria nodded, her exhaustion finally catching up with her. I couldn't have done it without the team, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Everyone worked together to make this happen. Henry smiled. That's what makes you such a great leader, Maria. You understand that it's all about teamwork. As the evening wore on, Maria stood by the loading dock, watching the last shipments of the day being moved into place. She felt a sense of calm wash over her. This was her moment, the culmination of everything she had worked for. And as she looked out over the busy facility, she knew that this was just the beginning. The warehouse had been her first success, but now, with the new center up and running, there were no limits to what she could accomplish. She had proven to herself, and to everyone around her, that she was a leader who could handle anything. That came her way, and as the night settled in, Maria felt a quiet sense of pride in everything she had achieved. The weeks that followed the successful launch of the new distribution center were some of the most fulfilling yet challenging times for Maria. The center was up and running smoothly, but now it was about maintaining the high standards she had set. Maria had always believed that success was not just about achieving a goal. It was about sustaining it, making sure that every detail was handled and every team member remained focused. She spent long hours making sure that the systems she had put in place continued to work efficiently. She would walk the warehouse floor each day, checking inventory, reviewing reports, and making sure everything was running as planned. There were days when it felt overwhelming. She had taken on a lot of responsibility, and the pressure was mounting. But with each challenge, Maria found a way to rise above it. As she walked through the busy aisles of the new facility, she noticed the workers were more confident now. They had adjusted to the changes and were working with a level of coordination that hadn't existed before. The safety protocols she had fought for were now second nature, and the warehouse was operating like a well-oiled machine. One afternoon, while Maria was reviewing reports in her office, Henry stopped by. He was always there when she needed him, offering guidance and support. "How are things going?" he asked, his voice casual but filled with genuine curiosity. Maria looked up from her papers and smiled. "We're doing well," she said. "There are always little things to fine-tune, but we're ahead of schedule." Henry nodded, clearly impressed. "I knew you could do it. I'm really proud of what you've accomplished here." Maria felt a swell of pride. But she also knew that the journey wasn't over. There was always more work to do. As the months passed, the pressure of overseeing two facilities began to take its toll. The demands of both the original warehouse and the new center were starting to wear on her. She had to be everywhere at once, ensuring safety, managing inventory, overseeing training, and meeting with corporate. There were days when she felt like she was losing herself in the process. "You've been running on empty," Henry said one day, noticing how tired Maria had become. "You need to take a break." Maria had heard those words before, but they didn't feel like an option. She had always been the type to push through, no matter how exhausted she felt. But Henry's concern made her stop and think. She had been so focused on the warehouses and her responsibilities that she had neglected her own well-being. "I'll think about it," she said, though she wasn't entirely convinced. As the next few weeks passed, Maria found herself increasingly overwhelmed. There were constant meetings, issues to resolve, and little time to step back and breathe. Her family had started to notice her absence again, and her friends were beginning to question why she wasn't taking time for herself. One evening, after another long day, Maria sat alone in her office, staring at her computer screen. She had worked hard to get where she was, but it was starting to feel like she was sacrificing everything else for it. Her phone buzzed on the desk, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from her mother. "We miss you, Maria. Don't forget to take care of yourself. We'll be here when you're ready." Maria stared at the screen for a moment, the weight of her mother's words sinking in. She had always prided herself on being strong, on doing it all. But was it worth it if she lost everything else along the way? The next day, Maria decided to take a step back. She told Henry she needed some time to rest and recharge, and he was more than understanding. "You've earned it, Maria," he said. "You've been giving everything to this company. Now, take some time for yourself." Maria smiled, grateful for his support. That weekend, she took a trip to visit her family. It had been too long, and she realized just how much she had missed them. As she sat around the dinner table with her parents and siblings, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. They talked, laughed, and shared stories, and for the first time in a long while, Maria felt like she could breathe. The time away was exactly what she needed. When she returned to work, she felt refreshed and more focused than ever. She was ready to take on the challenges that lay ahead, but this time, she was determined to find a balance. Maria had learned a valuable lesson. No matter how important her work was, she couldn't pour from an empty cup. She needed to take care of herself in order to take care of others. With a renewed sense of purpose, she stepped back into her role with a clearer mind. She began delegating more tasks to her team, trusting them to handle things while she focused on the bigger picture. The warehouse continued to thrive, and so did Maria. She had built something strong, not just in the warehouses, but in herself as well. She knew that no matter what came next, she could handle it, because now, she understood the importance of taking care of the person behind the job. As the months rolled by, Maria's efforts were finally paying off. The new distribution center was running efficiently, the original warehouse was operating smoothly, and the team was thriving under her leadership. But even with the success, Maria knew that maintaining the status quo wasn't enough. She had always been the type to push forward, constantly looking for ways to improve. Now, with both facilities running at full capacity, she started to focus on a bigger picture, the company's growth. She began working with Henry to develop long-term strategies, ways to expand operations while still maintaining the high standards they had set. One morning, as she sat in her office reviewing plans, Henry called her. "Maria, we've been asked to present at the upcoming company-wide conference," he said, his voice upbeat. "They want you to showcase the changes we've made here. It's a big deal." Maria took a deep breath. Being asked to present meant more exposure, more pressure, but it was also an opportunity to demonstrate the impact her leadership had on the company. "I'll be ready," she said, trying to sound confident. Over the next few weeks, Maria worked tirelessly to prepare for the presentation. She collected data, met with her team for insights, and put together a compelling narrative about how the warehouse's success was a direct result of the new systems, employee empowerment, and most importantly, trust. As the day of the conference approached, Maria began to feel the weight of the responsibility. She had always been someone who preferred to work behind the scenes, getting things done quietly. But now, with the spotlight on her, she realized this was more than just a presentation. It was a chance to solidify her place in the company's future. The day of the conference arrived, and Maria walked into the large auditorium, the buzz of excitement around her making her nerves spike. Henry was with her, offering words of encouragement. "You've got this," he said with a reassuring smile. "Just tell them your story." When her time came, Maria stepped up to the podium, the bright lights of the stage blinding her for a moment. She looked out at the audience, executives, managers, and employees from all over the company, and for the first time, she realized how far she had come. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady despite the nerves. "I'm Maria, and I've been asked to speak today about how our warehouse operation has evolved over the past year." As she spoke, she found her rhythm, her passion for the work shining through. She talked about the challenges, the changes they had implemented, and the results they had achieved. She shared the stories of the workers who had embraced the new systems, the improvements in safety, and the seamless coordination that had been achieved. By the time she finished, the room was silent. There was no applause, no immediate response, but Maria knew that she had made an impact. As she walked off the stage, Henry met her with a proud smile. "You did great," he said, his approval evident in his eyes. "You spoke from the heart. That's what made it so powerful." Maria smiled back, relieved and grateful. But she knew that this was just the beginning. The conference wasn't just about her. It was about the whole team. She had always believed in the collective effort, and today, she had shown everyone that leadership wasn't about one person. It was about empowering others, inspiring them, and creating an environment where everyone could succeed. The next few weeks brought new challenges as the company began to implement some of Maria's strategies across other departments. The changes she had made in the warehouse were being replicated in other areas, and Maria found herself more involved in the company's larger projects. With every new initiative, she gained more confidence. She knew that the hard work she had put in was not just changing the warehouse, but the entire company. But with this new level of responsibility came a new set of pressures. Maria found herself balancing her time between overseeing operations, managing her team, and developing strategies for future growth. It wasn't easy. She was often torn between her personal life and professional commitments, trying to find that elusive balance. One evening, as Maria sat in her office alone, going over the latest reports, she received a text from her mother. "We miss you. How about a visit this weekend? Your dad and I are looking forward to seeing you." Maria hesitated for a moment, the weight of the message sinking in. She hadn't seen her family in weeks, and the guilt she felt for not making time for them hit her hard. She knew her mother was right. She had to find a way to take care of herself, to reconnect with the people who had always supported her. After a long pause, Maria texted back, "I'll be there. This weekend. I promise." That Saturday, Maria took a much-needed break from work and visited her parents. The time away from the warehouse was refreshing, and being surrounded by her family reminded her of the importance of balance. When she returned to work the following Monday, she felt rejuvenated. She was ready to tackle the next challenge. knowing that success wasn't just about the work she did. It was about the people she worked with, the relationships she nurtured, and the support she gave and received. Maria had learned a valuable lesson. Leadership wasn't just about managing operations. It was about leading by example, finding balance, and making sure that no matter how high she climbed, she never lost sight of the things that mattered most. And as she walked through the warehouse that afternoon, watching the team work seamlessly together, she felt a sense of peace. She had created something lasting, something that would continue to thrive even without her constant oversight. The journey was far from over, but Maria knew she was exactly where she needed to be. The weeks following Maria's visit to her family brought a newfound sense of clarity. She had spent the entire weekend reconnecting with the people who mattered most to her, and when she returned to the warehouse on Monday, she felt more grounded. Her team was running smoothly, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. But there was still work to be done. The company was expanding, and Maria's role was growing alongside it. She had already proven herself as an effective leader in the warehouse, but now, the company had more ambitious plans that required her to take on even more responsibility. Henry approached her one afternoon as she was going through the new logistics reports. "Maria," he began, "the company's looking to expand even further. We're thinking about opening 2 more distribution centers, and they want you to be involved in the planning and overseeing the operations." Maria paused for a moment, taking in the news. This was big. She had already made a name for herself, but this would be a whole new level of responsibility. 2 more centers?" she asked, her voice steady, but her mind racing. "Yes," Henry replied. "The company wants to move quickly on this. They need someone with your experience to help lead the way." Maria took a deep breath, weighing her options. This was an opportunity she couldn't pass up, but it also meant more time away from the things she had been working so hard to balance: her personal life, her health, and her team. "I'm ready," she said finally. "I can help make this happen." Over the next few weeks, Maria worked tirelessly to develop the strategies for the new centers. She began researching locations, working with architects and engineers to design the layouts, and overseeing the logistics to ensure that everything would run smoothly. But as the pressure mounted, Maria started to feel like she was losing sight of herself again. She was so consumed with the new centers that she barely had time for anything else. Henry noticed her increasing stress levels and pulled her aside one afternoon. "Maria," he said, his tone serious, "you've been doing an incredible job, but you need to slow down. You're burning yourself out." Maria sighed, rubbing her temples. She knew he was right. She had been working around the clock, and the exhaustion was starting to take its toll. But she couldn't help it. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and now she couldn't afford to let up. "I'll be fine," she said, trying to brush off his concern. But Henry wasn't having it. "No, Maria, you won't be fine if you keep pushing yourself like this. You need to take care of yourself, or you won't be able to take care of anything else." His words echoed in her mind long after the conversation ended. Maria had always prided herself on her ability to push through adversity, to keep going even when things got tough. But this time, she realized Henry was right. She couldn't do it all, and she needed to find a way to take care of herself while still achieving her goals. That night, as she sat in her office, Maria made a decision. She would take a step back, delegate more tasks, and focus on balancing her work with her personal life. She wasn't sure exactly how it would work, but she knew she couldn't keep up the pace she had been maintaining. Over the next few weeks, Maria began to make adjustments. She worked closely with her team to ensure the new centers were progressing smoothly, but she also started taking time for herself. She set boundaries, turning off her phone after hours and prioritizing her health. She made sure to spend time with her family and friends, something she hadn't done in far too long. The balance wasn't easy to achieve, but with each passing day, Maria began to feel like she was regaining control. The new centers were progressing, the team was thriving, and Maria was finally starting to feel like she could breathe again. But as she settled into her new routine, she began to notice something else. Her team was thriving not just because of the systems she had put in place, but because of the trust and respect she had built with each of them. Maria had always known that leadership wasn't just about tasks and deadlines. It was about creating a culture where people felt supported and valued. And now, more than ever, she was seeing the results of that effort. One afternoon, as Maria was walking through the warehouse, She overheard a conversation between two workers. "I've never felt more supported," one said. "Maria's really got our backs." The other worker nodded in agreement. "She makes sure we all have what we need to succeed." Maria smiled to herself, feeling a sense of pride. She had come a long way from the quiet worker who just wanted to do her job. Now, she was leading a team, not just managing them. She was making a difference in their lives, and in turn, they were making a difference in the success of the warehouse. It wasn't just about the new distribution centers or the numbers on the reports. It was about the people. And as Maria stood there, watching her team work together seamlessly, she realized that this was her true success. She had built something that was bigger than just her. It was a culture of trust, collaboration, and growth. And that was something she could be proud of, no matter how much more she achieved in the future. Maria stood in front of the large windows of her office, looking out over the bustling distribution center. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the busy warehouse floor. It had been a long journey to get to this point, but now, after months of hard work, everything was falling into place. The new centers were running efficiently, the team was working together seamlessly, and Maria had finally found the balance she had been searching for. But even as things settled into a rhythm, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change again. The company was growing fast, and she knew that meant more opportunities and more challenges. She had already proven herself as a leader in the warehouse, but now it was time to prove that she could take on an even bigger role. She had been approached by corporate to take on a new responsibility, one that would require her to manage not just the warehouses, but the entire operations across the company. At first, Maria hesitated. The thought of overseeing more than just the warehouse was daunting. It would mean more time away from her team, more decisions to make, and more pressure. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that this was the next logical step. She had been given the tools to succeed, and now it was time to take that next leap. It was scary, but Maria knew she was ready. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, planning sessions, and adjustments as Maria transitioned into her new role. The workload increased significantly, and with it came new responsibilities. She was now overseeing not just the daily operations of the warehouses, but also coordinating with other departments and leading the company's expansion efforts. There were moments when she felt overwhelmed, but every challenge was an opportunity to grow. Henry was there, as always, offering support and guidance when needed. "You've got this, Maria," he told her one evening after a particularly grueling day. "The company is lucky to have someone like you leading the way." His words were comforting, but Maria knew that this was her journey to navigate. As the months went by, Maria found herself spending more time in meetings with corporate executives, discussing strategies for growth and ways to improve the overall efficiency of the company. It wasn't just about running the warehouses anymore. It was about shaping the future of the entire operation. There were days when Maria felt like she was constantly juggling, trying to balance everything while keeping her team engaged and motivated. But even on the toughest days, she never lost sight of what mattered most: the people. One afternoon, as Maria was preparing for a major meeting with the board of directors, she received a call from her mother. "Maria, how are you?" her mother asked, her voice warm and comforting. "I'm good, Mom," Maria said, leaning back in her chair. "Busy but good. Just preparing for a big meeting." Her mother chuckled softly. "You've been working so hard lately. Don't forget to take care of yourself, Maria. You're doing great, but you can't keep burning the candle at both ends." Maria smiled, grateful for her mother's reminder. It was easy to get caught up in the hustle, to forget about the things that really mattered. "I know, Mom," she said. "I'll take some time for myself soon. I promise." The conversation with her mother gave Maria the clarity she needed. As much as she wanted to push herself and prove that she could handle everything, she knew that maintaining her well-being was just as important as her professional success. She had worked hard to get to where she was, but she didn't want to lose sight of the things that brought her joy and peace. After the meeting with the board, Maria made a decision. She would continue pushing forward in her career, but she would also set boundaries. She would prioritize her time, making sure to take breaks and spend time with her family and friends. The balance she had been searching for wasn't about finding a perfect schedule. It was about finding a rhythm that allowed her to give her best at work without sacrificing her happiness. As she continued in her new role, Maria found that the changes she had made were not just about the logistics or the growth of the company. They were about creating a culture of respect, collaboration, and trust. Her team was more engaged than ever, and their success was a reflection of the work they had all done together. Maria's leadership style had evolved as well. She no longer saw herself as just a manager. She saw herself as a coach, helping others develop their skills and confidence. She wasn't just running the operation. She was fostering an environment where everyone could thrive. One afternoon, after a long day of meetings and planning, Maria sat at her desk, reflecting on the journey she had been on. She had started as a quiet worker, doing her job without drawing attention, and now she was leading a company, shaping its future. It had been a long road, but it had been worth every step. Maria smiled to herself, feeling a deep sense of pride. She had proven to herself that she could do anything, but more importantly, she had built something lasting. She had created a culture of success, not just through the systems and processes, but through the people who made it all happen. And as she looked out the window, watching the sun set over the warehouse, Maria knew that this was just the beginning. The future was bright, and she was ready for whatever came next. Months passed, and Maria found herself standing at the top of a mountain she had built herself. She had worked tirelessly, learned from every challenge, and proved to herself that she could lead, innovate, and grow. The company continued to thrive under her guidance, and her influence reached beyond the warehouse. She had become a symbol of resilience, growth, and leadership. Yet, for all her accomplishments, Maria realized that her journey was far from over. She had spent so much time pushing herself and her team to new heights, always striving for perfection. But now, as she stood in the middle of the bustling distribution center, watching her team move fluidly and efficiently, she understood that true leadership wasn't just about pushing for results. It was about fostering a culture of support, respect, and trust. Maria had come a long way from the shy worker who once felt invisible. She had built a career that not only earned her respect, but also created a legacy for those who came after her. Her team now looked to her for guidance, and she knew that. Her role had evolved. She wasn't just managing processes anymore. She was helping shape lives. The company had reached new milestones, and Maria had made it her mission to make sure that everyone who had been a part of her journey would share in that success. One afternoon, after a long day of meetings and strategic planning, Maria walked down the hallway of the original warehouse she had started in. The sounds of machines humming and workers collaborating filled the air, but it felt different now. The same warehouse that had once been a place of uncertainty for her now stood as a symbol of everything she had achieved. As she walked, Maria reflected on the people who had supported her along the way. Henry, her team, her family, and the countless mentors who had shared their wisdom. She had learned that no journey was truly hers alone. It was shaped by the people around her, by the lessons they taught her, and by the trust they had placed in her. That evening, as she stood by the loading dock, watching the workers finish their tasks for the day, she thought about the future. The company was poised for even greater growth, but Maria knew that growth wasn't just about expanding operations or increasing profits. It was about creating opportunities for others to thrive. She had already done so much, but there was still more work to be done. Maria felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that the foundation she had helped build would continue to support the company and the people she cared about for years to come. As the last of the trucks rolled out for the day, Maria stood there for a moment, taking it all in. She had fought for every inch of progress, overcome every obstacle, and transformed the warehouse into something better. But more importantly, she had created something lasting, a legacy of collaboration, empowerment, and respect. And in that moment, Maria knew that no matter what the future held, she was ready. She had built more than just a successful warehouse or company. She had built a community, one that would continue to grow and evolve long after she had moved on to new challenges. With a final glance at the bustling warehouse floor, Maria turned and walked toward the future, knowing that the work she had started was just the beginning. Get ready to be inspired by these touching stories of resilience, leadership, and personal growth. Maria's journey takes you through the challenges of managing a thriving warehouse while balancing personal life and professional responsibilities. From starting as a quiet worker to becoming a leader trusted by her team, Maria shows that true success comes from hard work, determination, and a willingness to embrace change. These touching stories highlight the importance of trust, collaboration, and empowerment, making them a perfect reminder of what it means to lead with purpose. As she faces the pressure of running 2 distribution centers and building a culture of support, Maria learns valuable lessons along the way. With each step, she discovers that leadership is not just about the job, it's about the people who make it all happen. With inspiring moments and real-world challenges, these touching stories reveal how even the smallest decisions can lead to the biggest successes. From overcoming obstacles to finding balance, Maria's story is one that shows the power of perseverance and the lasting impact of trust and teamwork. Through these touching stories, you will see how true leaders rise above challenges, make a difference, and leave a legacy for others to follow. Whether you're looking for motivation, inspiration, or a reminder of the power of teamwork, these touching stories will leave you reflecting on what it truly means to be a leader.